So I just wanted to say a couple things about the stock market crash today. Um, so this was the worst stock market crash in 33 years, since October 1987, when you had Black Monday, I believe it was called. So 22.6% is the drop that happened in October of 1987, and today is second place in the past 33 years at a drop of about a 10% drop in the stock market. So a couple thoughts. In March 2009, the Dow Jones was about 6,600. Today it's at 21,000. So it's triple the level that it was at back in March of 2009 at the depths of the financial crisis. The other point that I wanted to make was that the Dow was at almost 30,000. It's fell about a third, which is a big drop. Don't get me wrong. But what what do we know? So the Great Depression had stocks fall about 90%. Now, if you adjust for the fact that there was a lot of deflation during that time, actually it's not nearly as bad as you would think, because there was also 20-30% deflation. So really, stocks were down more like 60-70% in terms of purchasing power. But how bad is today? The answer is if you're young, it's not that bad. So if you think about what this means long term, if you need the money that you invested in the next 5 years, it's a disaster, right? Unless you had a more conservative asset allocation. And if you don't need the money in the next 5 years, then it's an incredible opportunity. And if you're a student loan borrower, I wanted to share a couple thoughts that I have. So, well, first off, the Spanish flu killed 50 to 100 million people around the world. It killed about 700,000 people in the United States. So that is the worst case scenario for this virus. 2% mortality rate, presuming the virus doesn't mutate, then theoretically you could see 1 to 2% of the world population die like it did back in the Spanish flu. So that's kind of your worst case scenario. During the Spanish flu, markets were down about 15%. So if markets were down about 15%, probably that's because you didn't have Facebook and the media and everything working together to make everyone panic. And if I had to choose panic or millions of people being dead, I would choose panic, right? I would choose economic hurt. But it seems like it's probably not going to be as bad as Spanish flu. Now, a couple other things. So there's 5 things I really want you to think about as a student loan borrower right now with this massive crash in the stock market. So the first one is job security. So if you have an unstable job, really be thinking about what's going to happen to your paycheck the next few months, right? You could easily get laid off. You could have your income reduced for whatever reason. You need to be prepared for that. The second is you need to get an emergency fund. So get an emergency fund because you might need it in the next few months as stocks and the economy get worse and worse. The third thing is you might try to lower your student loan payments. So if you can lower your student loan payments, now is probably a good time. If you could refinance to a 15 or a 20-year term to get a really low required payment, you'll lock in a decently low interest rate and you'll be able to refinance down the line, potentially in a better economy, to a shorter term. That's called the refinancing ladder, when you start up with a long repayment term and then you refinance more to a shorter repayment term. That's the idea behind that. So I would start off with a 20-year type of repayment strategy with that for your student loans. If you're going for forgiveness, recall that you can update your income with your servicer and ask them to recalculate your income if it's needed. Next is you might not be able to refinance anything, so just be prepared for that. If you're not able to refinance anything, then you might need to keep the kind of debt that you have for the long term. So that's a little bit scary, but just realize that if you locked in a reasonably low interest rate for your 30-year fixed rate mortgage, then that's okay. If you've locked in a low interest rate on your student loan refinancing, you might be stuck with that. But that's okay. And if you have high interest rate credit card debt, well, you need to pay that off, right? Because things are probably going to get worse in the economy. So you really want to try to have as much emergency savings and no short-term debt as possible. So the last tip, number 5, is invest for the long term. So if you have the market down 10%, it's down a third from its high. What changed in the U.S. economy fundamentally? The answer is only coronavirus. So if this coronavirus epidemic does get cured, or if it declines in the intensity, okay, let's say we make it to the summer and this thing is not killing millions of people like some people are predicting, then stocks are going to soar. And again, it's all about long-term approach. Can you invest this money that you won't need for the next 5 years? So I would say continue your automated investing plan. Try to do 5% into retirement at least, and do 100 a month into a non-retirement account like a Vanguard brokerage account. You want to have these automated contributions continue unless you lost your job, in which case you'd need to try to preserve cash until you can find another one. And just remember that people who invest for the long term are the ones who have long-term results that are financially empowering, right? So I would just say that as a student loan borrower, don't freak out. You have an asset. Your asset is that you have a lot greater education than other people do, and you have more specialized skill set than other people do. So take comfort in that and know that you'll be able to pay a percentage of your income, okay, instead of having to pay, a huge amount of money. And if you do have to pay a lot, then try to refinance to a 20-year while you still can today with low interest rates. And finally, the liability doesn't need to be something that stresses you, because at the end of the day, if we don't have mass casualties from this coronavirus thing, then that's a result that we can all be happy about. So focus on, just keeping you and your family safe, and obviously take this opportunity to try to save some money and make some smart financial decisions. Thanks. I'm Travis Hornsby with Student Loan Planner. Thanks so much for watching this version of YouTube Live.